Hajim had a lot to overcome pretty early in life. He was kidnapped at just 3 years old by his father, then spent his entire childhood shuffling from orphanages to foster care. In his new book, On the Road Less Traveled, Ed talks about how he overcame that rough start to build his own family and make millions on Wall Street. I sat down with Ed to glean some of his amazing life lessons. Take a look.
Ed, so what a book you've written. It's just incredible. You know, it starts off and you think it's going to be this typical immigrant story. You know, immigrant grandparents came to the country, pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. But yours takes a really crazy 180 when you're very, very young, right? So
you know, it's not my fault, but you know, it basically it is a crazy story. And you know, I buried it for, you know, when I was 18 years old, I buried it. I decided not to deal with it. And, you know, all the psychologists will tell you this is crazy, but it was good for me because I didn't have to deal with it. And when I got 55 years later, I started to deal with it. And luckily, I'd kept all my father's letters. And when he died, he'd kept all my letters. So I was able to separate, you know, what I remembered from real fact. And I got, you know, it took a lot of time and a lot of work, but, you know, it was really a crazy experience. I thought I was in 4 foster homes. It turned out to be 5 foster homes. You know, it was an interesting trip for me in writing the book, I'll tell you.
it was an interesting trip, and you read about your childhood and you can't help but pity you. I mean, here you are, this young kid, and you find yourself moving constantly, and some of the foster homes are great, but some of them aren't. You're in orphanages, you're out of orphanages, and this whole time, it's not like you don't have parents. Your dad is alive, but he was shipped off, right? That was the only job he could find. He was out at sea and he couldn't take care of you. And so there's, that's where you found yourself. But incredibly, you write that that's what made you the person you are, the constant, having to reinvent yourself and make
disadvantages became advantages. Really, in many respects, I go back through and I last night I made a talk to the group here, about 200 people here in Costa Rica. I said, many of you are unfortunate because you had good backgrounds. You didn't have to be tested. But when you go from 15 to 20 different locations before you're 18 years old, you develop adaptability. I mean, I always kid about this, but when you go from one Catholic school to the next, you got to go to the schoolyard. You got to find out,
and then to a Hebrew school.
Who you're going to beat up. You got to find your place. You get adapted to the whole thing. The same thing. Each orphanage had its rites of passage. And you go there and you're a new boy, and you got to start again.
Mm-hmm.
So I became adjustable, and adaptability translated into my business life when they said, I remember E.F. Hutton who wants to go to Japan? Nobody wanted to go. We had no business there. But I raised my hand. I said, I'll take it on. And I spoke a little Japanese. We had some fun. Or a new guy said, why don't you go to this division? Well, it's a mess. Well, okay. I've been in difficult situations before. So in many respects, it was a benefit.
One of my biggest takeaways from your book is the fact that you're not bitter and angry with your father, who not only kidnapped you when you were 3 away from your mother, but lied and said that your mother was dead this whole time. And you kind of missed having her in your life when clearly you needed a parent so badly. You speak about it without any bitterness. And I found that really inspiring. I don't know.
He gave me one thing, which, I don't know whether he meant to do it or not, or he was just guilty, but he gave me unconditional love. He was never there, but in his letters, I was never a bad boy. And he said he always said you're the greatest.
I would love to hear just from you. I know you didn't have to write this book. You weren't in it for the money, but it's such an incredible story. What do you hope people take away when they read your book?
I can give you 10 takeaways. I mean, the most important takeaway is anything possible. Anything is possible. If you're 4'10", and you weigh 80 pounds, and you're a freshman at Far Rockaway High School, and you end up as I ended up, or you end up with a leather jacket going to university. That's a little bit actually farther along, University of Rochester, and you have absolutely no money except a scholarship, and you end up being chairman of the board of trustees. And there's a statue of me. I'm the first one in my neighborhood to get a statue. Nobody else has a statue. You have to die to get a statue. The damn president decided to give me, and I have squadron.
I got to tell you, Ed, at least your statue is still standing because they've been rounding up some statues and yanking them down lately.
I haven't torn it down yet. Number 2, education is the solution to almost everything. And I believe this. At Harvard Business School, when I was the president of the Alumni Association, I tried to create lifelong learning, which was 20 years ago. they're finally picking it up again now, because I really believe you have to have lifelong learning. It's absolutely necessary, and not necessarily formal. I've tried to convince them to have what I call re-dipping. Every time they have a reunion, bring the kids back and give them, 3 days of what's going on. Because you go from no computer to computer, from no internet to internet, to what's happening now on social media. Anyway, so that's the second. The third thing is find a partner. Find a partner. Partners are different today than they were, at my day. But if you find someone to share your life with, that you can support, that can support you, life becomes a lot easier. Someone who's really interested, who says, Ed, stand up straight. Don't lean over. You talk too fast. You did great last night. When Barbara said to me last night, you really did a great job. I really believe, because she's critical. And so that's important. So find a partner, and then in everything else you do, and in the book you'll see, when I had the right partners, I was successful. Yeah. When I had no partners or the wrong partners, I failed. And so partners are very important, especially in today's world. My day, you could be a little more of an independent. Today, it's collaboration. It's so important that you have people who, and I have a whole description of partners, which I can spend a lot of time with you. But you find a partner who does things you can't do. You find a partner who does things you do, but he does it better than you, or she does it better than you. You find a partner that does things that you love to do, that you can do really well, but you don't like. You find those three partners, you end up doing things that you do well, that you like. What's could be better deal? Anyway, so partners, number 3. Number 4 is seek your passions, talents, constantly probe. That's the one I wanted to take away. You could see where I look, international, I really loved it, but I gave it up because it wasn't the right thing, and I tried it out. Physics the same way. Whatever, you look at all my life, being an athlete, I was convinced that I might be a basketball player, but I spent hours out there till my hands hurt, but I never grew enough, so it was all right. And there's another golden rule, which I say about principles, is that early in your life, you got to decide, there's a second golden rule: he who has the goal rules. In other words, you got to decide how much of your time and energy you're going to spend on achieving financial success, because that's a very different pathway. That's a fork in the road. And I took the fork in the road to make money. And then somewhere along in my life, that translated from making money into freedom. When I left Lehman Brothers, I went to firm and sales at a cut in salary and everything else, because I found out what I really wanted, more important than money, was freedom, working for a small company. I took over the company, firm and sales, in 1983. And in 14 years, we grew it 20 times. Brilliant. Oh, wonderful manager. Stock market was up 10 times. 10 times at that point. So I had the wind at my back. I wasn't that smart. And you find most businessmen, if you look very carefully at how the successful are businesswomen, you'll find out that if they're really successful, they've had the wind at their back for a period of time. And then, of course, knowing there's the wind at the back, that most things are what I call the Hajim S-curve, or everybody else's S-curve. There comes a time when you have to sell or get out. And every 3 years, I believe people should take a deep dive. Really a deep dive. Go to the beach someplace and walk along and analyze what I call the 4 buckets of life: self, family, work, community. And community in particular, think about my legacies, okay? I work for E.F. Hutton, it's gone. I work for Lehman Brothers, it's gone. I work for Firm and Sales, it's gone. Rochester's gonna be there forever. What I'm hoping for is individuals will ask me questions about the takeaways they wanna know about. Sure. And I hope I can communicate. What I'm finding, I can write a book now, because on the people reading my book talk so much about themselves when they send me emails, that I could write a book about it, because they relate to certain parts of my life.
Of course, everybody relates to something different, right?
And they also their lives are more important than mine.
Well, your life is incredible. The book is called On the Road Less Traveled. The photographs inside are incredible. The story is just incredible. And you walk away feeling really, really inspired after reading that book. So Ed Hajim, thank you so much for giving us a little insight into how this came about.